As a song from Ghostbusters says, bustin' makes you feel good. Unless you're busting a potential union from forming in your company, it might feel good at first until everyone finds out and then the protests start. It's Sunday, so let's get sensational. I'm Mike, and I'm back to talk about the gaming news. And we're kicking off the news again this week with Rockstar. So last week we talked about Rockstar firing around 30 to 40 employees from their UK and Canada locations, and a number of those employees were either part of or planning to join the Independent Workers Union of Great Britain, or the IWGB for short. Rockstar claimed that the employees were fired for sharing company information in a public forum. It was being speculated that the IWGB may go after them for union busting, but nothing had been confirmed at that time. Well, things have really gone downhill for Rockstar since then, as there were protests led by the IWGB that started outside of theirs and Take-Two's offices in London and Edinburgh due to the firings. One of the interesting things about the protests is some of the quotes that were shared from the employees implied that the confidential information that was being shared in the Discord chat was related to pay and work conditions, and basically they were talking about their pay to make sure they were being compensated fairly. But again, that's just what I'm gathering from the statements, what I'm reading into it. And Rockstar hasn't publicly said what kind of information was being shared that got these employees fired, but if it was related to this union chat, then it would make sense that they would be discussing pay, which shouldn't be considered confidential information if the person is choosing to share it. But anyway, after the protest, the IWGB formally filed a complaint against Rockstar for union busting. They also claimed they tried to meet with Rockstar to negotiate on behalf of the employees to resolve the matter, but Rockstar declined. Then on top of all that, there are over 200 employees at Rockstar North that signed a letter and gave it to senior management, basically demanding that the terminated employees be reinstated, and they've planned another protest on November 18th. So it was bad enough for them to get the negative press about the GTA 6 delay, but this is significantly worse. Either way, this isn't looking good for Rockstar. They're basically getting hit externally and internally now from this whole thing and getting a bunch of negative press over it. Now personally, in my opinion, there's not enough information out there to say that Rockstar for sure fired these people for trying to unionize, but also Rockstar hasn't elaborated on what kind of information was shared and in what context that led to them firing these employees. So yeah, at this point, I don't really have any empathy for Rockstar in this situation. And while we're on the topic of firings, of course we have more news about layoffs, and this time it's from Crystal Dynamics. So Crystal Dynamics is best known for the newer Tomb Raider games, and they've announced more layoffs. This is actually the third time this year that they've laid off staff. But Crystal Dynamics announced on LinkedIn that they're cutting 30 people from their staff. They claim that it's due to them restructuring and that they're supporting the employees through the transition. I'll at least give them credit for not using the word agile in the post. It's also mentioned in the IGN article that Crystal Dynamics was bought by Embracer Group in 2022, and at that time they had 273 employees. So 30 people would be a huge hit to their workforce, and on top of that they did 2 other rounds of layoffs earlier this year, so they're probably working with a significantly smaller team than they had back in 2022. It's also worth noting that Crystal Dynamics was a support studio for Perfect Dark, which was canceled, and that was rumored to have led to the last of the layoffs that they announced. So it's not clear if this is still a knock-on effect from that or if this is related to something else. Either way, it's still not great out there job-wise for anybody right now, so I'm hoping that the affected people land on their feet soon. Alright, it's time to switch things up from the layoff talk and talk about the Switch 2. And the Switch 2 has been a little, bricked up lately, if you know what I'm saying. As in it's been bricking some third-party docks and accessories. I don't know if that pun had the impact that I intended. So the Switch 2 had an update recently to version 21.0.0, and for some reason the update seems to be bricking some third-party Switch 2 docks and accessories. At first, people speculated that Nintendo did this on purpose, but they put out a statement saying that they had no intent to hinder or invalidate legal third-party dock compatibility. From the sounds of it, the docks have stopped working and will probably require an update from the manufacturers to fix. So if your bricked up Switch 2 busted your dock, then you may want to check with the manufacturer if it lasts for more than 4 hours. What? Speaking of dropping loads, this video is not getting monetized at this point. Valve just dropped loads of new hardware, and that's what we're talking about today. And our final story. So after the many rumors, Valve has finally announced their new hardware. So Valve announced a new Steam controller, a new Steam machine, and the Steam Frame, which is their new VR headset. They're basically all set to release in early 2026. There's no pricing available just yet, but the new hardware is pretty exciting. And I'll start with the Steam controller, aka the one that I'm most likely to buy. But basically the Steam controller is what I expected. They're taking the Steam Deck's controls and making it into a standalone controller, which is really cool because I really like the Steam Deck's thumbstick and button feel, and the touchpads are nice to have for doing things that you need a mouse for, especially if you're playing like from a couch or something like that. One thing I really like about this controller is it comes with a small charging dock that's also the RF dongle to connect the controller to PC. Now it can also be used as a wired controller or over Bluetooth as well, but if I go wireless on PC, I prefer using a dongle because the latency is way lower than Bluetooth, and all the controllers come with this dongle in the box. They'll also have gyroscope controls like the Steam Deck, and the bottom of the controller as well as the thumbsticks can detect if there are fingers placed on them, so that can be used for something like activating the gyro controls. There was one video I saw where they configured it so if you take one hand off the controller, it activates the gyro controls. They also mentioned that they're using magnetic thumbsticks, which are supposed to be more reliable than Hall effect thumbsticks. So yeah, the next generation Steam controller seems really cool. I'm personally excited for it as a way to make it easier to control a PC from the couch, which can be a pain without having a mouse connected. Having the touchpads will make it a lot easier, but part of the reason they did a new controller is for the new Steam machine. So the new Steam machine has the RF module built in for the controller, so you won't need to use a dongle to get the faster wireless connection, which is cool. But yeah, Valve is basically making a Steam OS machine for the TV. They're claiming it's 6 times more powerful than the Steam Deck, and you can run games at 4K 60 using FSR, upscaling of course. So it's not going to be a super high-end PC as far as the specs. And speaking of the specs, what Valve has revealed so far is they're using the AMD Zen 4 based CPU with 6 cores and 12 threads, 16 gigs of RAM, which is upgradable since they're using standard laptop RAM. The GPU is semi-custom and is based on AMD's RDNA 3 architecture, with 28 compute units and 8 gigs of VRAM. Now, as far as the GPU performance, the speculation is it's going to be close to an RX 7600, which is considered to be a lower to mid-range card, so it doesn't sound like it's going to be a super powerful gaming PC. But given the form factor, which is pretty small, it seems like a decent trade-off for a living room PC. I mean, it looks like it'll fit into a TV stand way more easily than an Xbox or a PS5. It also has magnetic faceplates that are customizable, which I really like too. And as far as the storage configurations, it'll come in a 512 gig or a 2 terabyte configuration. Like the Steam Deck, the storage is upgradable and actually supports the larger, more standardized 2280 size SSDs. So personally, like I did with the Steam Deck, if I were to get one, I would just go with the lower storage option and upgrade the SSD myself. There is also a micro SD card slot on the front to save games too as well. And when I saw it, I was like, who would want to use that? But it actually makes sense because Valve said you can take it out and put it in your Steam Deck so you won't need to re-download games a bunch of times. And you can also put them in the Steam Frame, which is Valve's new VR headset and the successor to the Valve Index. I will say out of all the products, the Steam Frame surprised me the most because it's kind of taken on the Quest in some ways. So the Steam Frame is going to function both as a standalone headset, it's running a Snapdragon 8 Gen 3, and it's also a headset to stream games from a PC, even though Valve is saying it's more focused on the streaming aspect. Now the cool thing about the streaming aspect of it is Valve made a dedicated dongle to stream games to the headset over the 6 gigahertz band. So unlike the Quest that relies on your standard Wi-Fi connection for wireless streaming, this will have dedicated hardware that will function on a less crowded frequency for streaming. The headset can also stream as well as play natively any game from your Steam library apparently. Similar to what they did with the Steam Deck and Linux, it's emulating x86 games in that environment. Now considering it's still a mobile chip, I'm not sure what kind of VR games it's going to run natively. It will support mobile VR games as well, but as far as playing x86 VR games or just x86 games in general, I'm wondering what kind of performance we'll see from this headset. But as far as the rest of the specs for the headset, it has a 2160 by 2160 per eye resolution and up to 144 Hz refresh rate. It'll have 16 gigs of LPDDR5 RAM and either a 256 gig or 1 terabyte storage configuration, of course with the SD card slot that we talked about like the Steam machine has to switch your games between all your different Steam devices as well. I forgot to mention the controllers have been redesigned as well, and they look a lot like the Quest controllers, but they do have a full gamepad layout, including a D-pad for playing regular PC games. They also have finger detection like the Steam controller, and this is basically to replace the functionality of the knuckle controllers from the Index where it could detect your fingers. Now, I doubt price-wise that this is going to compete directly with the Quest because they've always tried to stay in the lower to mid-range space, but it's nice to have a more open standalone alternative to the Quest, and it looks really good. So that's all the hardware they announced, but of course we'll have to wait for pricing, which I'm guessing won't be too long since it's supposed to ship early next year. Valve did say that the Steam machine will be priced similar to a similarly spec PC, so I'm guessing it'll probably be around like $800. They're not pricing it like a console like they did with the Steam Deck, but part of it could also have something to do with the rumor that the next Xbox may be a similar setup to what Valve is doing with the Steam machine. So part of it may be them not wanting to go head to head with Microsoft since they currently do business with them. Now, as far as the Steam controller, I think it'll be in the $60 to $80 range, or at least I'm hoping. And the Steam frame, I'll say it's probably not gonna be under $1,000. But let me know what you think in the comments. How do you feel about Valve's new hardware announcement? And where do you think that they'll land price-wise for all this stuff? Again, let me know down below. And if you enjoyed this video, then make sure to tell a friend, tell a coworker, like, share, subscribe, and hit that bell notification button thing, wherever it is. And always do at least 2 things at the same time. Peace.